Commander Krellick stood at the entrance of Earth's Global Defense Academy, 6 crystalline eyes scanning the gleaming structure that seemed to shimmer and shift in the morning light. The building's architecture defied conventional geometry, its surfaces appearing to fold into dimensions that shouldn't exist in normal space. Krellick's sensor implants struggled to maintain a consistent reading, which was concerning. "Welcome to humanity's premier military training facility, Commander." Admiral Sarah Chen materialized beside him, her crisp white uniform somehow both immaculate and intimidating. Krellick's translator implant rendered her words perfectly, though something about her tone made his central nerve cluster tighten uncomfortably. Primitive was the word he'd been instructed to use by the Galactic Council. Primitive but potentially useful. Yet as he watched a group of cadets phase through what appeared to be solid matter during their morning exercises, that assessment felt increasingly inadequate. "Your arrival is perfectly timed," Chen continued, gesturing toward a massive courtyard where hundreds of students moved in perfect synchronization. "Our first years are just beginning their basic quantum manipulation drills." First years. Basic drills. Krellick's secondary heart missed a beat. "Surely you mean your advanced specialists," he chittered, mandibles clicking in what he hoped passed for casual interest. "Such manipulation of fundamental forces requires decades of training in any civilized system." Chen's smile widened slightly. "Oh no, Commander. This is entry-level training. We find it's best to start them young, before they develop too many preconceptions about what's impossible." A cadet nearby was casually juggling what appeared to be small spheres of condensed space-time, her fingers weaving patterns that made Krellick's most sophisticated sensor implants shriek in protest. She noticed his attention and smiled, causing the spheres to merge into a miniature galaxy that spun between her palms. "Cadet Zhang," Chen called out, "perhaps you could demonstrate your midterm project for our guest." The young human's eyes lit up. Literally, Krellick noticed with mounting unease networks of bioluminescent circuitry briefly visible beneath her skin. "Of course, Admiral. I've been working on localized reality restructuring. Nothing fancy, just basic probability manipulation." Before Krellick could process what basic probability manipulation might entail, the cadet made a simple gesture. The air around them rippled, and suddenly they were standing in what appeared to be every possible version of the courtyard simultaneously. In some, it was raining. In others, the sun shone from impossible angles. In one particularly disturbing iteration, the laws of physics appeared to be more of a polite suggestion than a requirement. "Very good, Cadet," Chen nodded approvingly. "Though your quantum coherence could use some work. I noticed at least 3 timeline branches where causality was running backwards." "Yes, Admiral. I'll keep practicing," the cadet replied, looking somewhat sheepish as reality settled back into its normal configuration, or what passed for normal in this place. Krellick fought to keep his external membrane from changing color to match his growing horror. This was wrong. All wrong. His civilization had been exploring the stars when humans were still figuring out basic tool use. How had they progressed so far, so fast? "Shall we continue the tour?" Chen asked, already moving toward a building that seemed to occupy several locations at once. "I'd love to show you our temporal mechanics department. The students are doing fascinating work with paradox weaponization." As Krellick followed on unsteady legs, he began composing his report to the council in his head. The humans weren't primitive. They weren't even advanced. They were something else entirely. A species that had looked at the fundamental laws of reality and decided they were more like guidelines, and they were teaching their children to do the same. The real question was, had his civilization discovered Earth too late to contain it, or too early to survive it? The temporal mechanics department turned out to be a vast chamber that defied conventional spatial relations. Krellick's internal navigation systems simply gave up, displaying a series of error messages as they tried to reconcile how a room could simultaneously be larger than the building containing it, while also being infinitely small. "Here's where we teach our students to think beyond traditional physics," Admiral Chen explained. leading him past a group of cadets who appeared to be deconstructing gravity itself. We find that once they understand the universe is more of a suggestion than a rulebook, progress comes quite naturally. A young cadet stood in the center of what appeared to be a localized supernova, carefully folding spacetime like origami. Each precise movement caused cascading ripples through reality that Krelix's sensory organs struggled to process. The student noticed their approach and quickly contained the cosmic phenomenon into a small cube that hovered above his palm. "Just working on my thesis project, Admiral," the cadet explained. "I'm exploring ways to compress infinite space into portable formats. Could be useful for storage or tactical applications." Chen nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, Cadet Martinez. Though you might want to watch your quantum entanglement ratios. I noticed some timeline bleed in the upper dimensions." "Yes, ma'am. Still working on maintaining coherence across multiple probability streams." Krelix's translator implant nearly shorted out trying to convert their casual discussion of concepts his civilization's top scientists were only beginning to theorize about. "This is impossible," he chittered, mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. "The energy requirements alone would—" "Oh, we stopped worrying about energy constraints last semester," another cadet chimed in, her hands dancing through holographic displays that showed mathematical equations Krelix had never seen before. "Once you understand how to borrow power from parallel universes, it's really just a matter of proper bookkeeping." The Admiral guided Krelix toward a section where students were engaging in what appeared to be combat exercises, though calling it combat felt like calling a supernova a warm breeze. Cadets phased in and out of conventional reality, their movements leaving trails of quantum possibilities in their wake. Some wielded weapons that seemed to be made of condensed probability, while others had somehow weaponized abstract mathematical concepts. "Basic self-defense training," Chen explained, noting Krelix's expression. "We find it's important for cadets to understand how to protect themselves across all possible dimensions simultaneously." They passed a student who appeared to be having a heated argument with multiple versions of himself from different timelines, while another cadet practiced what looked like hand-to-hand combat with the concept of entropy itself. "Admiral," a senior instructor approached, his uniform seeming to exist in several quantum states at once. "We're ready to begin the practical demonstration on paradox resolution techniques." Chen turned to Krelix. "You're in for a treat, Commander. Our senior class has developed some fascinating approaches to weaponizing causality loops." The demonstration that followed would haunt Krelix's nightmares for cycles to come. The cadets didn't just break the laws of physics, they rewrote them, created new ones, and then broke those too. They treated fundamental forces of the universe like building blocks, rearranging reality with the casual confidence of artists working with clay. One particularly unsettling exercise involved students creating localized zones where probability itself became malleable. Krelix watched in horror as a cadet caused an impossible event to become retroactively inevitable, then reversed the process just as easily. "Impressive work," Chen commented as a student successfully merged three conflicting timelines into a stable synthesis. "Though remember, class, in real combat situations you won't always have the luxury of maintaining temporal consistency. Sometimes you need to embrace the paradox." The casual way she discussed concepts that should shatter the fabric of reality made Krelix's primary heart stutter. His civilization prided itself on its advanced technology, on breaking the boundaries of what was possible. But this was something else entirely. "Tell me, Commander," Chen said as they watched a cadet literally punch a hole through causality itself, "how does your species approach quantum mechanics education?" Krelix's mandibles clicked rapidly as he tried to formulate a response that wouldn't reveal just how primitive his civilization's understanding suddenly seemed. "We have made significant advances in theoretical quantum manipulation within controlled laboratory conditions." Chen's smile held something that might have been pity. "Ah yes, we went through that phase too. About 200 years ago, I believe. before we realized that the only real limitation was our inability to imagine beyond conventional physics. A sudden commotion drew their attention. A group of first-year students had accidentally created a recursive temporal loop, causing several versions of the same moment to stack upon each other like layers of reality. Sloppy work, Chen sighed, though she seemed more amused than concerned. Cadet Phillips, please demonstrate the proper technique for collapsing quantum uncertainty without destabilizing local spacetime. As they watched the young student confidently unravel the temporal knot, Krelix realized with growing dread that everything he'd seen so far, every impossible feat, every casual violation of universal laws, was considered basic training by human standards. What, he wondered with mounting horror, did they teach in their advanced classes? The entrance to the Psychological Warfare Division seemed to breathe, its corridors shifting with patterns that made Krelix's optical processors strain to maintain focus. Unlike the reality-bending displays of the physics department, these distortions felt more intentional, as if the very architecture was attempting to interface directly with his consciousness. You might feel a slight pressure in your mind, Admiral Chen warned, though her smile suggested she found his discomfort amusing. The walls here are partially sentient, a student project from last semester. They wanted to explore the possibility of architecture that could actively influence cognitive processes. A group of cadets sat in what appeared to be a meditation circle, though meditation wasn't quite the right word for what Krelix was witnessing. Their consciousness seemed to extend beyond their physical forms, creating overlapping fields of pure thought that rippled through the surrounding space. Basic empathy training, Chen explained. We find it's important for our students to understand not just how other species think, but how they experience reality itself. One of the cadets opened eyes that somehow looked both inward and outward simultaneously. Would you like to share your perspective, Commander? She asked, her voice resonating on frequencies that shouldn't have been possible for human vocal cords to produce. We're practicing multi-species consciousness integration. Before Krelix could decline, he felt a gentle brush against his mind. Not an invasion, but an invitation. The sensation was so subtle he almost missed it, which made it all the more terrifying. His species prided themselves on their advanced mental defenses, yet this human student had slipped past them as easily as walking through an open door. Cadet Evans, remember what we discussed about consent protocols, Chen chided gently. Not everyone is comfortable with direct cognitive interface. Sorry, Admiral, the cadet replied, withdrawing her mental presence so smoothly that Krelix couldn't even tell exactly when it had gone. I'm still working on my approach vectors. They moved deeper into the facility, passing rooms where students practiced what Chen called reality consensus manipulation. Krelix watched as cadets learned to alter not just their own perception of reality, but the shared perception of entire groups. The trick, an instructor was explaining to their class, isn't to force your version of reality onto others. That's crude and ultimately ineffective. Instead, you want to help them discover that their version of reality was always more flexible than they imagined. In another chamber, students worked with what appeared to be pure consciousness itself, distilled into visible forms that twisted and flowed between them like living light. Advanced metacognition studies, Chen noted, teaching them to think about thinking, to dream about dreaming, to imagine new ways of imagination itself. A particular demonstration caught Krelix's attention. A cadet stood before what appeared to be a holographic representation of an alien mind, one he recognized as belonging to his own species. With careful, precise movements, the student began to unravel its defensive structures, not by breaking them, but by convincing them they had never truly existed in the first place. Remarkable efficiency, Cadet Zhang, Chen commented. Though remember, in real-world applications, you'll want to ensure the subject's core identity remains intact. We're not here to destroy minds, just to help them evolve. The casual way she discussed such fundamental violations of consciousness made Krelix's neural pathways misfire in protest. His species had long feared human military might, their rapidly advancing technology, their physical adaptability. But this was something far more dangerous, the ability to reshape thought itself. They approached a section marked Conceptual Warfare Division, where students practiced what appeared to be combat techniques using pure ideas as weapons. Krelks watched in mounting horror as cadets weaponized abstract concepts like doubt, hope, and uncertainty, turning philosophical constructs into tactical advantages. Yesterday's class managed to create a new school of philosophical thought, so compelling it retroactively altered its own origins, Chen mentioned proudly. We're still dealing with some of the temporal paradoxes, but the potential applications are fascinating. A student approached them, her eyes holding depths that seemed to spiral into infinity. "Commander," she said, her voice somehow bypassing his ears and materializing directly in his thoughts, "would you be interested in participating in our practical exam? We're studying the malleability of fundamental beliefs and their impact on species-wide development." "Perhaps another time," Chen interjected, noting how Krelix's external membrane had begun to lose color. "The commander still has much to see, and we wouldn't want to accidentally rewrite his civilization's entire philosophical foundation." Again. That casual "again" sent shivers through all of Krelix's nerve clusters. How many other species had these humans already influenced? How many civilizations have been subtly reshaped by human cadets practicing their assignments? As they left the Psychological Warfare Division, Krelix realized that everything he'd witnessed in the physics department, the manipulation of reality, the bending of universal laws, was merely the surface. The true power of humanity lay not in their ability to reshape the physical universe, but in their capacity to remake minds themselves. And they were teaching these skills to their children, as if they were nothing more extraordinary than basic arithmetic. The advanced integration wing of the academy made everything Krelix had witnessed so far seem almost mundane by comparison. Here, the line between biology and technology, between organic and synthetic, between possible and impossible, didn't just blur. It ceased to exist entirely. This is where we explore the true potential of human enhancement, Admiral Chen explained as they passed a group of students whose bodies seemed to phase between different states of matter. Though we found that enhancement isn't quite the right word. It implies adding something that wasn't already there. A cadet approached them, her form flickering with quantum uncertainty. Networks of bioluminescent circuitry pulsed beneath her skin in patterns that made Krelix's visual processors throw up error messages. "Admiral," she nodded, her voice harmonizing with frequencies that shouldn't have existed in normal space. "Would you like to see our latest breakthrough in neural quantum computing?" "Proceed, Cadet Richardson," Chen replied. The student's eyes gleamed with an inner light as she accessed what appeared to be multiple dimensions of data simultaneously. "We've managed to achieve direct integration with the quantum fabric of reality itself," she explained, her consciousness visibly extending beyond her physical form. "It allows for real-time probability manipulation and timeline optimization." To demonstrate, she reached out and caught a strand of what appeared to be raw possibility between her fingers. With a gentle twist, she rewove it into a new pattern, causing localized reality to reshape itself according to her will. The key was realizing that consciousness itself is just another form of quantum information. She continued, casually violating several laws of physics that Krelix's civilization had considered immutable. "Very impressive," Chen nodded. "Though your temporal coherence could use some work. I noticed at least 3 potential paradox points in that demonstration." They moved on to a section where students were practicing what appeared to be combat techniques, though calling them combat techniques felt like calling a supernova a warm breeze. Cadets merged with advanced technology in ways that transcended conventional understanding, their bodies becoming conduits for forces that shouldn't have existed in this universe. "Watch this," Chen said as they observed a training session. A student stood in the center of a practice arena, his form surrounded by a shifting matrix of light and energy. With a thought, he split himself across multiple timelines, each version executing a different combat sequence, while maintaining perfect quantum coherence. Basic multidimensional combat training, Chen explained, noting Krelix's expression. We find it's important for our graduates to be able to fight effectively across all possible realities simultaneously. They passed a laboratory where students were experimenting with what Chen called consciousness digitization. Krelix watched as cadets transferred their minds into pure information, merging with advanced AI systems before reforming into physical bodies that seemed to operate under their own laws of physics. The breakthrough, a researcher explained, her form flickering between different states of existence, was realizing that reality itself is just information. Once you understand that, rewriting the code becomes almost trivial. In another section, students worked with technology that seemed to defy categorization. Machines that thought, weapons that dreamed, and devices that existed in superpositions of multiple technological paradigms simultaneously. But what truly terrified Krelix wasn't the technology itself. It was how seamlessly the humans had integrated with it. We used to think in terms of augmentation, Chen mused as they watched a cadet phase through several layers of reality while solving complex quantum equations, improving human capabilities through artificial means. But we've moved beyond that now. These aren't tools we're using. They're extensions of what we already are. A student demonstration caught their attention. The cadet had somehow merged her consciousness with the Academy's quantum computing network, becoming a hybrid entity that existed simultaneously as flesh, machine, and pure information. She manipulated the fabric of space-time as easily as Krelix might move his limbs. The interesting part, Chen continued, is that we're still not sure where human potential ends and technological enhancement begins. Every time we think we've found the limit, our students push beyond it. Krelix's neural processors struggled to categorize what he was witnessing. His civilization had always approached technology as something external, a tool to be used and controlled. But these humans, they hadn't just mastered technology, they had become one with it in ways that redefined what it meant to be conscious, to be alive, to exist at all. As they prepared to leave the integration wing, a final demonstration made Krelix's primary heart nearly stop. A group of first-year students had successfully merged their consciousness with the quantum substrate of reality itself, becoming living expressions of possibility and probability. Just a basic exercise in fundamental nature manipulation, Chen explained, as if students routinely transcended the boundaries between mind, machine, and reality itself. Wait until you see what our advanced classes are working on. Krelix didn't want to imagine what could possibly be more advanced than what he'd already witnessed. The humans hadn't just surpassed conventional limitations, they'd rendered the very concept of limitations obsolete. Back aboard his ship, Commander Krelix's trembling appendages hovered over the quantum communication array. The emergency beacon pulsed steadily, awaiting his input. After 3 attempts to steady his neural patterns, he began his report to the Galactic Council. Most esteemed council members, this is Commander Krelix. Classification Omega Priority. Subject: Earth's Military Capabilities Assessment. Recommendation: Immediate non-engagement protocol. He paused, his external membrane shifting through shades of distress as he struggled to put into words what he had witnessed. How could he explain to the council that everything they thought they knew about humans was wrong? The Human Military Academy is not a training facility, he continued, his translator struggling to find appropriate terms. It is an incubator of impossibilities, a forge where reality itself is treated as merely optional. The ship's sensors detected unusual quantum fluctuations in nearby space, forcing him to strengthen his encryption protocols. Their students, their children, casually manipulate forces our most advanced scientists barely comprehend. They don't just break universal laws. They rewrite them. They don't just use technology. They become one with it in ways that defy categorization. Warning lights flickered across his console as the ship's AI struggled to process the data he was transmitting. The humans have achieved what our civilization would consider technological singularity, but they treat it as a starting point, They have weaponized consciousness itself. They have turned philosophical concepts into tactical advantages. They have merged with quantum reality in ways that make our most advanced cybernetic systems look primitive. His secondary heart fluttered as he recalled the casual way Admiral Chen had discussed concepts that should have shattered reality. Most concerning is their rate of adaptation. In the time it has taken me to compose this report, their archives have likely already documented and analyzed my potential responses. They are evolving, learning, preparing for scenarios we haven't even conceived. A sudden realization made his neural pathways misfire in panic. They are watching me compose this report, he chittered urgently, not through any technology we would recognize, but through methods that transcend conventional surveillance. They probably knew what I would report before I did. The ship's quantum sensors registered an impossible reading from Earth's direction. My final recommendation, Krelix continued, his voice trembling, is to establish immediate diplomatic relations, not as a gesture of peace, but as a necessity for survival. The humans must be considered a quantum-level civilization, capable of altering the fundamental nature of reality to serve their purposes. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. From Admiral Chen, enjoyed your visit, Commander. Hope your report to the Council is thorough. Remember, what you saw was just our first-year curriculum. Krelix's scales turned completely transparent. Final addendum to report. The humans are not merely dangerous because of their capabilities. They are dangerous because they see possibility where others see limitations. They don't just push boundaries. They question why boundaries should exist at all. He ended the transmission and sat in silence, contemplating the implications of everything he had witnessed. The humans weren't just preparing for the future of warfare. They were actively shaping it. They weren't just advancing their capabilities. They were redefining what capability meant. As his ship prepared for faster-than-light travel, one final message arrived from Earth. Safe travels, Commander. By the way, that reality-bending technology you witnessed, that was last semester's project. Wait until you see what we're working on now. Commander Krelix engaged his ship's engines and fled Earth's solar system, his external membrane never regaining its original color. Behind him, the Global Defense Academy continued its work, preparing its students for wars that existed only in possibility, readying humanity for a future that refused to be bound by mere reality. And in her office, Admiral Chen smiled as she filed the commander's predictably panicked report in a folder labeled First Contact Reactions. She opened another file, this one marked Current Projects, and began reviewing proposals that would make everything Krelix had witnessed seem quaint by comparison. After all, humanity was just getting started.